everyone. Thanks for joining us here on CBS News. I'm Elaine Quijano.
And I'm Lana Zak. We are following breaking news from the nation's capital following the death of Senator Dianne Feinstein. Feinstein died last night at the age of 90. Her death came just hours after casting a vote on the floor of the Senate. The cause of death has not been released, but she had been in declining health over the past couple of years.
The California Democrat leaves behind a legacy of firsts since being elected to the Senate in 1992. She was the first woman to chair the Senate Rules Committee. She was also the first woman to be named the top Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and she was the longest-serving woman in the Senate.
Flags at the U.S. Capitol have been lowered to half staff as tributes continue to pour in. So far, no memorial or funeral arrangements have been announced. Now, traditionally, a senator would lie in repose in the Capitol Rotunda, but even that honor could be impacted by the looming government shutdown. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer remembered his longtime colleague and friend on the floor of the Senate.
She was smart. She was strong. She was brave. She was compassionate. But maybe the trait that stood out most of all was her amazing integrity. Her integrity was a diamond. Her integrity shone like a beacon across the Senate and across the country for all to see and hopefully emulate.
We have team coverage of Senator Feinstein's legacy and the impact of her death on the current session of Congress. CBS News congressional correspondents Scott MacFarlane and Nikole Killion join us now. Welcome to you both. If you could, Nikole, I'll start with you. Break down the significance of this loss in Washington. What is the legacy of Dianne Feinstein?
Well, it's huge. I mean, I think you heard the Senate Majority Leader sum it up with respect to her integrity, that it shone like a diamond. And, just in listening to a lot of the tributes this morning on the Senate floor, so many personal stories from all of these senators about Senator Feinstein's preparedness, that she was just a nice person, easy to consult with on legislation, and that she was working up to the very end. I know there's been a lot of focus on her health and some of the challenges that she faced in recent months. But for instance, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand said that she was working in spite of her health, and that just last week they had a meeting, for instance, on issues of homelessness and affordable housing. Many stories like that on the Senate floor, and not just from Democrats, but from Republicans as well. Of course, she was legendary from the standpoint of being one of the first, the longest serving woman in the Senate, the first to lead the Senate Intelligence Committee, the first female member on the Senate Judiciary Committee. So she does leave a very long legacy. Leader Schumer also noting the fact that there are now 25 women in the Senate who stand on the shoulders of Senator Feinstein, who was elected in 1992. Also known as the Year of the Woman.
I want to bring you into this conversation as well, Scott. Talk to us about some of the landmark victories during the senator's tenure in Washington.
Leading the Senate Judiciary Committee, the first woman to do so, and doing so at such a seminal moment, key confirmations to the U.S. Supreme Court, some important questioning of nominees for the Supreme Court. Even the more recent ones really resonate when she questioned Amy Coney Barrett and was a particularly pointed questioner of the now Supreme Court justice. So many accomplishments in the worlds of gun control. In fact, those who were among the first to issue statements of sympathy to Senator Feinstein's family were those who have been particularly active in pursuing gun restrictions. And all these things happening here today underscore her significance as a mentor to many young senators and young members of Congress, and as a pivotal figure. In the U.S. House, as the afternoon began, there was a moment of silence in which the California congressional delegation, both parties, honored Senator Feinstein. In the Senate chamber, I was there as they put the flowers on her desk and senators exchanged hugs. A couple had tears in their eyes as they talked about Senator Feinstein's legacy in almost an open mic session. But what strikes me most is that this is not happening in a vacuum. It's not happening at an unimportant moment in other issues. There are votes today in the U.S. House trying to stop a government shutdown. The margins in the U.S. Senate are now incredibly slim until Senator Feinstein's successor is appointed, and there may be some pivotal votes coming in the Senate after the government shuts down, as is expected at 12:01 a.m. Eastern on Sunday. And oh, by the way, there is a particularly fierce fight in a Democratic primary from some established members of the House seeking the nomination to win her seat in November 2024. And I'm going to listen in now as the House Speaker walks by us a few strides away.
All right, Scott, we'll let you do that. And in the meantime, just to follow up, Nikole, on what Scott was saying, what are the next steps regarding Senator Feinstein's seat?
Well, as Scott alluded to, you have the governor of California, Governor Gavin Newsom, who will now have to appoint a temporary replacement. And this could be a very potentially controversial decision for the governor. There had been some discussion as to when the senator, if she were to step down prematurely, how he would fill that seat. And there have been a lot of calls for him to name a woman of color, specifically a black woman, because when then Senator Kamala Harris was elected as vice president, left a vacancy, but that means that there are no black women in the Senate. Of course, you have Senator Alex Padilla, a Latino, but many people would like to see a black woman in that seat. Of course, one of the people running for Senator Feinstein's seat is Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who has been a longtime lawmaker, very well respected in California, a progressive. But just a couple of weeks ago, despite calls that she should be a person named to that seat potentially, the governor indicated that he doesn't really want to put his thumb on the scale, if you will. And so it's possible that when and if the time comes for him to name a successor, that he may select someone else. And who that someone else is, we don't yet know. So this is something that does have a lot of political implications, both in the state of California, but also here in the Senate, because again, as we are on this precipice of this potential government shutdown, again, you have very narrow margins here in the Senate. And so whoever is named to that spot will be very critical.
Yeah, I understand that Scott is back after listening to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. I want you to weigh in on what Nikole was saying, which is the importance right now of every vote for trying to avoid this potential government shutdown. Did McCarthy allude to how close they may be to trying to push forward with some sort of solution? And how does the lack of Feinstein's vote potentially impact that shutdown?
Well, let's start with what we just heard from Speaker McCarthy as he walked past here. He's been doing what he's been doing on an hourly basis over the past few weeks, holding court and expressing optimism, saying he's never going to give up. I could tell you, though, having been through the corridors for most of this day, there is not an optimism. There is an imminence to this government shutdown. And ultimately, what we've heard over the last hour or two, including from the speaker just now, is blame shifting. He's trying to blame the president and Senate Democrats. The Senate Democrats have very unequivocally tried to blame the House Speaker for this imminent shutdown at 12:01 Sunday morning. There is a vote as the afternoon began being readied for a House plan to keep the lights on and the doors open for about 30 more days. But there's a growing sense, if not a certainty, it's going to fail. And when the deadline reaches, there'll have been nothing that passes the U.S. House to keep the government open. And that is a reality his members are grappling with. Over in the Senate, there's been a bipartisan bill with about 80% of senators supporting a measure to keep the lights on and doors open for about a month and a half come Sunday. It will go through the process of getting passed this weekend, but it will not be voted on here in the House. The House Speaker won't touch it. So Senator Feinstein's absence earlier this year was impactful for certain pieces of legislation and certain committee hearings. At this moment, a 99-member U.S. Senate is not really going to change the trajectory of things. But there may be some urgency placed on California's governor to move swiftly with appointing a successor. I've seen that in the past. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I saw Senate seats get filled quite quickly, including in Hawaii 11 years ago, because there were fragile matters with close margins. There will soon be other matters fragile with close margins, potentially to reopen the government after a shutdown.
All right, Scott MacFarlane and Nikole Killion, thank you both.
CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes joins us now for more on all of this. Nancy, first, President Biden spoke about Senator Dianne Feinstein earlier. Here's some of what he had to say.
She was a historic figure, trailblazer for women, and a great friend. Dianne made her mark on everything from national security to the environment, gun safety to protecting civil liberties. The country's going to miss her dearly, and so will Jill and I.
Nancy, tell us more about how White House officials and others in Washington are reacting to her death.
Well, you know, it's a real moment for reflection, Elaine and Lana. The president himself worked with Dianne Feinstein very closely on Capitol Hill for nearly 2 decades. He was the chair of the Judiciary Committee when she arrived in the Senate in the Year of the Woman, 1992. He said that he recruited her to serve on that committee because he could see what she was made of, and he wanted her on his team. And they would go on very swiftly to work on the assault weapons ban, which passed in 1994, a really remarkable achievement for someone who had only been in the Senate for a couple of years at that point, as Dianne Feinstein had. So you saw the president there speaking at the Pentagon, calling her a trailblazer for women, a historic figure, a good friend, someone the country will miss. And he said that he's going to have more to say about Dianne Feinstein later today. We presume that those remarks will take place here at the White House, where flags are being lowered to half-staff in her honor as well.
And Nancy, you covered the Senate for so many years. You knew Senator Feinstein well in terms of coverage. She was one of the Democrats' most formidable party members. I'm wondering if you can give us some insight into how her death may change the ability of the party to operate in Washington, particularly in this short-term period.
Well, you know, she came into Congress with a lot of leadership experience. She had been hailed as one of the best mayors in the country, the mayor of San Francisco, and so she was widely respected when she arrived on Capitol Hill, despite the fact that, as President Biden has noted, as Leader Schumer has noted, she was often the only woman in the room in a lot of these meetings. And so she sort of hit the ground running, and she also had this kind of moral authority on some major issues of the day because of her background, because of the fact, for instance, she had been one of the first people to respond after that assassination in San Francisco, where the gay rights leader Harvey Milk was killed. She had a lot to say about LGBTQ plus rights, about gay marriage, about gun safety, and those were issues that she continued to champion over decades. I think what was also notable about her was the fact that she was extremely persistent. You know, she got the assault weapons ban passed in the mid-90s. It lapsed in the mid-2000s, but she never stopped fighting to try to get the assault weapons ban reinstated, even when it was clear that the Senate didn't have the votes, because she had a long-term plan and a long memory, and she knew that these issues could come back around, and she wanted to keep it in the forefront.
Quite a legacy. Nancy Cordes at the White House for us. Nancy, thank you.
You're welcome.